What's going on, Washington Commanders fans? So, Commanders have made a few cuts, a few surprise cuts, but not much. I just wanted to go over the cuts they have made today. A few guys that they just, signed a few days ago, but on a day where we have to stop worrying about the wide receiver room, on a day where it's going to be the final time I talk about Michael Gallup, and boy am I happy about this. Chris Moore, KJ Osborne, you're next. By tomorrow at 4 o'clock, that's when the cuts, you have to have your 53-man roster ready by then. They're going to be gone. So, can't wait for that, but make sure you guys hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe. We're about 4 away from 2,100 subscribers. Hit that notification bell as well. So, the Commanders have released cornerback Essang Bassey, who they signed the other day, and I was actually surprised by this move because Essang Bassey actually played good in the preseason game on Saturday. Had a few nice plays, played good at the cornerback position, but thought he could be a practice squad guy. I'd rather see Bassey on the practice squad than a guy like Bobby Price, But it is what it is. They released him. They released wide receiver Michael Gallup as well. We're getting to him more later. I want to save him for later. Center Nick Harris, they also released. He was from the Browns. He is a guy that they signed about, 3 days ago, and he's already released, so apparently he didn't do what they wanted. Tackle Tyree Phillips has been released. I didn't think Tyree Phillips would be released because I thought he would stay here as a depth piece. He's a good veteran player, but I think now that they have George Fant, the signing of him kind of kicked Tyree Phillips out. Defensive tackle Norrell Pollard has been released as well. He also made plays on Saturday. He also did pretty good on Saturday too, but not good enough to make the cut. Not surprised. Wide receiver Braylon Sanders. Shout out to the DC Defenders, but Braylon Sanders has been released just as quick as that. So, let's talk about Michael Gallup. This is the big release, obviously. So, the dude is 30 years old. He's coming off a season where he sat at home all year, where he was retired. And he didn't do much this preseason. This whole offseason, I really didn't get any updates through camp, through practice, through anything about Michael Gallup. And no updates is a bad thing for him. He has to be making plays through camp, and yes, he worked with Dan Quinn in Dallas. Yes, he has connections on the team, but he just wasn't good enough to make the cut, apparently. And, he did okay in the preseason. He made a few plays, but just, you don't want to keep a guy like that around, I would have thought it would have been a guy like Chris Moore or KJ Osborne because of their drops. They were the guys that dropped the football. Michael Gallup, not so much. He didn't drop the football that much, but, as much as other guys. But Michael Gallup is gone, and they're going to choose youth over Michael Gallup. Ja'Cory Brooks is still here, And I'm just surprised. I'm a little bit surprised that, he's the first wide receiver gone. I thought it would be Chris Moore or KJ Osborne, but very well tonight, we could see where they cut, KJ Osborne or Chris Moore. We could very well see that because those guys suck, but it's just not, it just didn't work out. It's on a day where Terry McLaurin got extended, they didn't feel like they needed another wide receiver. They didn't feel like they needed a veteran guy, and they just didn't feel the need to keep him around. By the way, the Bengals got a contract extension done with Trey Hendrickson on the same day Terry McLaurin got his deal. That's cool. But we're getting close to the season. Roster cuts are tomorrow at 4 o'clock. I expect to see KJ Osborne, Chris Moore, and we already see Michael Gallup go here. That's the whole reason I'm making this video. But, we're going to see a bunch of these guys go. And I talked about it. I said, I think Tyree Phillips, I thought that was the other surprise cut. But as far as the other guys, none of them surprising. But Michael Gallup was brought in to be a reliable veteran who could possibly make this roster. And, he didn't work out. Gallup had been hurt this offseason. He dealt with, strains and a lot of different things this offseason. And so he had to sit out some, and that definitely didn't help his case, So just not a great offseason for him. He'll probably officially go to retirement this offseason, so I wish him the best moving forward. But he's a guy that had 1,400 yards in a season. Like, he's a guy that's had a lot of good seasons in the NFL. And so, but he's just out of his prime, and that just happens with some players. Like, they just go ahead and cut these players because they're not going to do anything. Like, they don't do anything anymore. And so I guess this isn't that surprising after all. But yeah, those are the roster moves the Commanders have made, and we'll sit on any more moves, and we'll wait for any more moves. Again, I expect, like, Chris Moore is next. KJ Osborne's next. Who does that leave? I think Ja'Cory Brooks. Like, I think Ja'Cory Brooks is the guy that they're probably going to keep. I think he's going to be the guy that they're going to keep after all. And I didn't see that coming, but they're going to choose a youth, and they're going to choose a guy that if you put on the practice squad, like, somebody's picking him up. He had 1,000 yards last year in college, and he's just a good receiver. He can go down the field deep, and again, he's young. So I'm excited, to see what the future holds for this wide receiver room with, now Terry back, and you have Jalen Lane, a young star. But Michael Gallup has been released, as well as a few other guys. But yeah, nothing much, man. Just a short few list of names. Let me go back over the names again. Asang Bassi, cornerback. He played, for the Chargers. He played for a few teams, but he just didn't work out. He made some plays Saturday, but wasn't great. Michael Gallup, veteran, brought in to be reliable. Again, didn't work out, but it wasn't, it was a good experiment over the summer. Center Nick Harris. I hope that Michael Dieter is not the backup this year, but it's sure looking like it. Nate Herbig retired. A lot of guys are are going down. I cannot have Michael Dieter as my backup. I'll take Nick Harris, but they released him. Tyree Phillips, who was going to be a good tackle, but again, that didn't work out, and I thought he would be a good depth piece, but they didn't like him. George Fant kind of took his spot. Norrell Pollard, who was just going to be a defensive depth guy, and they didn't decide to keep him. He's going to be on the practice squad, so we'll see what he does there. They can always call him up. And then wide receiver Braylon Sanders, out of the defenders, has also been released. So those are the list of guys that have been released. Terry McLaurin has been extended today, and that is the good news of the day. So that's all I got for right now. If the Commanders come out with any more roster moves, of course I'll give those to y'all. But for right now, that's going to do it for me. Hail to the Washington Commanders. As always, Commanders cut Michael Gallup, and his NFL career comes to an end pretty quick. Peace.